This is the only one that Card Game Fanatic needs to watch. Hey y'all, welcome back to Z Temple, where we are finishing out the good card portion of our Times to Come set review. We have the silver cards remaining, and some of these are support cards for archetypes we've already talked about, but some of them are kind of doing their own thing. So right off the bat here, we've got Covenant, God's Judgment. It is a consistency covenant, which I'm always happy to see. It is fairly specific, so this is a card that can get you a hero without already requiring you to have a hero. That's always good to see, and I like having 10 or 11 ways to a hero so that I have a good chance of having a hero on turn one so that I can get attacking and right off the bat. But in some decks, that means that I'm running more heroes than I would like to, just so that I can hit that consistency. So anytime there's a card that isn't a hero and can potentially be used for something other than a hero, like a Covenant, that can get you a hero on turn one, I'm always interested. This one is specific enough to be an Isaiah hero. However, as we'll see in our next card, there are a few Isaiah heroes that you really would like to get early. So I'm going to go ahead and put this into staple. Not necessarily because I expect Isaiah decks to be a staple of the meta, but because I do expect that you are going to put this card in your deck if you are playing an Isaiah hero focused strategy. And why would you be playing an Isaiah focused strategy? Because of this guy. This guy is great. This is probably my favorite card in the set that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to play a whole lot of. Protecting your dudes as long as you don't control an enhancement. It's a pretty strong effect. I was running the red Mary as a tech card in my reserve last year, to stop my Meek heroes from getting Prince of the Arid. And this guy protects himself too in territory, which means, and is protecting all of your guys in territory. That's really good, especially this year from the defenses that you guys will see later. The defenses this year can mess you up, and they are not going to be ignoring your territory. So this guy just giving blanket protection both outside of battle and in battle until you play an enhancement, plus including himself in that protection, is a very good effect. Unfortunately, it is limited to specifically Isaiah heroes. And we do have a couple solid Isaiah heroes. We've got Mighty Warrior already, and we've got a couple versions of Isaiah, and a few more Isaiah Angels out here. But I don't quite know if they're a whole deck. You've got the draw 3 guy from this set, but he doesn't make your enhancement CBN, and you've got the previous versions that do make your enhancement CBN, but don't draw. I think if we could run the Scrolls one, I would be happier about it. But if Isaiah decks see play, it is because of this card. It's going in Cornerstone regardless of how playable this strategy is, just because of how uniquely strong an effect like this is in a deck that can actually take advantage of it. So I think this will eventually be a good deck once we get a critical mass of Isaiah heroes that are good enough to be their own deck. Maybe we even just see a Prophets deck slamming 1 or 2 Isaiah heroes and this guy pulling from reserve or something, just because of how strong that effect is, that you would include it just for a subset of your heroes. I definitely want to mess around with it. It's a cool card. I like my dudes being bulletproof. Here's another Isaiah Angel. A little bit less exciting than the other one. Pretty much just banding or an early game playing an Isaiah hero out. So this is somebody you could maybe throw under the bus on an early attack to get this guy or Isaiah himself out for a future attack. This is kind of a thing where I think where Isaiah decks are right now, I might probably play this if I was like all in on Isaiah heroes only. But if I'm playing this, I think that means the deck is not quite good enough yet to be competitive. Um, so maybe there's a future version of the deck that like really cares about having as many of the angels out as possible, and it's Isaiah surrounded by a ton of angels, and there's like some really good payoff for that besides just the D3 on this guy. And this would be a great card in that. Maybe you make a big band, and they're protected, and that's the deck. That is solid, but again, I think quite that by itself is not quite competitive. I think there are enough ways to disrupt this in the modern card pool that alone is not busted enough to be competitive, in my opinion. So I'm putting this guy in flex. I think if you could try making a deck that's just a big banding stack with a D3 on top of it and protected, but and negating evil characters and souls, I guess, because this definitely goes in that deck. But unless that specific strategy is how you're doing it, this probably doesn't quite get there. Speaking of throwing a D3 on top of a book-specific hero lineup, we've got Patrollers of the Earth. Drawing 3 is good. Drawing 3 cannot be negated is even better. The exchange to reserve is neat. I think Concealed Riches is, like, people compare this to Concealed Riches. Concealed Riches is much more relevant due to the fact that you can pull a package of cards that you're planning on using for your attack. And this guy doing it only after you already committed to attacking with himself makes that effect, in my opinion, a lot less relevant. I think this is basically just for the D3. And similar to Isaiah, I don't think that we're quite at the point that we're going to be just jamming a deck with 3 Zachariah heroes in it to max out the draw on this guy and being thrilled about it. So I think, unfortunately, this guy is going down here, which I could see definitely some people being surprised about, dropping a D3 down to just out of competitive viability. Maybe in the future we'll get enough Zachariah heroes that this will be worth building around, but I think for the time being, this is probably just not quite there. We've got a few Zachariah heroes in here, but so Surveying Spirit, shuffle an evil card from the hand with the most revealed brigades, regardless of protect. So regardless of protect, hand disruption is pretty nice. However, that's all that this guy is doing. And like you're not banning him in. He's not banning to anybody else. It's on silver. I don't think mono silver wants this. I don't know what non-mono silver deck wants this. And also, it has the inconsistency of requiring them to have the most revealed evil brigades, notably being tied for 1 is not the most. So you either have to have 0 brigades that you're revealing, or you have to hope that they have more than 1. So again, I think the Zachariah stuff is just not quite strong enough to make it into competitive play. The cards are cool. Maybe they'll be relevant in the future, but I think it's just probably not quite there yet. Relayer messages. If this guy was banned and take, then that would make me slightly more interested in trying to do something where you've got this guy pulling an enhancement, this guy on top drawing cards, and that's actually like quite a lot of value that you're generating. Maybe there'd be something there. Unfortunately, I think just taking or banding is not quite good enough. We've seen silver characters that can take stuff. And they have seen some play, but in my as far as I'm aware, where we're currently at with mono silver, you're probably still leaning on the gospel stuff and all the drawing cards that they're offering. And this guy pushing you Old Testament is probably not quite there. So again, I think this is a toss-up between competitive and non-competitive. I'm gonna go ahead and drop it down here. I think it's just there's just not quite a deck that this guy wants to be in that exists right now. Servants by the River. Um, Negating and potentially underdecking cards off of a deck. Not really sure what deck wants this guy either. I think regular Daniel decks just play the old Servants by the River, who's a phenomenal card. This is a generic character with different art, so I guess you could play both of them, but I don't think you want to. This guy's not banding, so again, he's just kind of like this guy as a lone attacker. I'm definitely not seeing it. Nor are you really going to be banning this guy in to get the negate, especially in light of the card we're going to look at after this. I guess you could band it in with 4 in the Fire, but I think we're already not playing 4 in the Fire. So I think there's not really a home for this guy in competitive play, so he's going down here. Next, we've got the Interceder. This is what Servants by the River wishes he was. This is a silver support character for Daniel that provides negate utility, but he takes care of the yeeting himself in all by himself. This is a regardless of initiative negate and a triggered add to battle. Those are both very strong effects, and having them on one character is phenomenal. This is going to get you out of a lot of annoying scenarios. This is even something that can negate an opposing Agrippa, even through Herod's Temple. So that, which is like, that was your number one enemy as this deck is something like Herod Agrippa, and this guy just deals with it. So phenomenal hero, Unity in a deck that is basically automatically Unity anyway. So I think if this guy was not Unity, this would potentially be our first meta staple of the format, since there would be a lot of decks that would be happy to just slam a hero in that could be offer this much utility. But the Unity means that it is a Daniel only card, and thus just a cornerstone of that one archetype is the highest that it can go. So, but it definitely does go there. This is a reason to play Daniel, along with many others, and I can't imagine that you would not include this in your Daniel deck. Moving on to an angel that I can imagine that you would not include in your Daniel deck is New Gabriel. This card's fine. Band and do something, always solid. I think if there were less really good other Daniel characters to run, then you would definitely include this. But there are. Unfortunately for Daniel, there's too many really good characters to include that I think this guy probably doesn't make the cut. His biggest utility, as I mentioned in the Daniel video, was that this does easily allow you to convert the double banding of Michael into 2 human banding chains. So in some massive Daniel offense where you have all the generic dudes and Gabriel, you can have your unique dudes on one side and then Gabriel to the generic dudes who all band to each other on the other, and get the whole stack in there. But I think that's probably overkill. I think 90% of the battles that the deck was going to win with just the unique character stack, it's going to win anyway, whether it had the generic character stack plus Gabriel in there or not. If this guy discarded evil characters, then he would potentially, I think, be seeing play in other decks outside of Daniel with Restored Land that he notably triggers. But it's just evil enhancements, so like nice effect, but probably not necessary. So I think it could shake out that you end up including him. I think it's slightly more likely than a couple of the other guys that didn't make it. But again, I think that most Daniel hero lineups are not going to be quite big enough to fit this guy in. And then our final Daniel Angel, we've got the Heavenly Watcher. Again, because he's not banding, I'm not sure how he's getting in here. You're definitely not including this as an attacker in your Daniel deck. and I don't think it does quite enough for mono silver to want it either. So I think it doesn't quite get there. It does useful things, like you're happy to remove their artifact, you're happy to negate evil band, but I don't know how this guy's getting into battle or making it into your lineup with just that. Some more generic characters with different art. We now have 4 playable cherubim, I believe, that you can all put in the same deck, so that's kind of cool. They do also do something and band, a common theme of some characters we've seen, and some of them are solid. I don't know exactly what deck they go into. There's some build of like prophets with their supporting angels that we maybe could see. A lot of the cards that we've been getting in this set and the previous set with prophet stuff were kind of like they had angels and prophets that worked together, but they didn't necessarily have a ton of reasons to reward you for running characters of those 2 different brigades together, rather than just committing to running all green when we are seeing cards like Prince of the Air that very heavily incentivize you to not have unnecessary brigades in play. So restricting people from switching reserve or just getting a free card is a nice thing to have in your band. So if you're playing a bunch of cherubim, this is one of the first ones that you're going to want to include. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one in flex. Just, I don't know what the deck looks like that wants this, but if there is one, this one's definitely one of the cherubim that makes it if they don't all. This one is kind of neat. It is a battle winner if or a territory removal if they have hand protection. The fact that this gives the opponent a choice is not great. You always want to avoid giving the opponent choices when possible, because they're always going to choose the thing that benefits them the most. But you are an evil card is going away one way or the other from somewhere, and you're getting to do it plus band. So maybe there's a build of the evil character removal deck that does run cherubim plus Ezekiel. You're shooting 2 things if their hand's not protected. I could see it. So you know what? We're gonna put this guy in flex as well, just based off of the potential for that build of the evil character controlling deck to want this cherubim. Moving on to the silver enhancements, we've got probably one of the coolest enhancements in my opinion. Do not question, with some very epic looking art there. This effect is solid. Have high strength, and negating their enhancements is almost a battle winner in and of itself. It does have a downside of negating your own stuff if your heroes aren't Unity their own book. If this negated evil cards and not just enhancements, I think it would be much more likely to see play. Again, the Daniel decks are typically more worried about negating characters than they are negating enhancements, since the enhancements that can actually deal with a massive band are ones that the opponent doesn't get a chance to negate. And Daniel has some pretty good negates. So, and it's also silver instead of white. So I think this probably does not make it into Daniel decks. It's not even a guaranteed include for an Ancient of Days Daniel deck. Maybe Mono Silver wants this, but I think Mono Silver actually Mono Silver did struggle with enhancements for a while, but I think they've gotten enough that this probably doesn't make it. It could, but I think it probably doesn't. I wish it did, for how cool the title art and just like the vibe of the card is, but oh well. Delivered from Distressed. This one is pretty interesting. We've got a way to play a hero from deck and then band. So this is both banding in a guy, but then also getting the guy that you want to band in. that is a great way to minimize the main downside of a banning enhancement, which is that like on turn 1 you might not have anybody to bring in. Notably, this has some interesting interactions with, say, a Jeremiah combo where you're trying to put a territory class hero in play that's going to interact with your other enhancements straight like in the middle of the battle. This is a card that can do that. So this definitely could see play in Jeremiah combos. The fact that it requires initiative and then all it does is band in a guy means that it's probably not going to see play outside of that. But who knows? Maybe with some of these angels that like pull an enhancement to set something up, that's how you set up like a hero that you actually want to utilize. So I could see this being useful just because of how broad of a tutor it is and the utility that it does add in addition to that. But I think it's a little bit questionable. We'll go ahead and put it in flexible. Then we've got Behold the Lord. This is just a neat AoE battle winner that also hits their fortresses. It is Isaiah, so relevant for a CBN Isaiah guy that has angels banded in could be playing this. I think that there's enough green Isaiah cards that they would typically rather play those. And angels probably don't want this either just for mono silver. I think that they would rather have all their enhancements at least interrupt, if not negate, because with angels typically they're large dudes or bands that are going to be not given initiative to play battle winners. Maybe there's an angel build that's a bunch of small dudes tutoring battle winners and stuff, but again, I think with just cards like Relay or Messages pulling Behold the Lord, if that's your deck, that's not quite going to cut it competitively against the defenses that we have now. So I think this is probably not going to... Great booster card, solid filler card, probably not that much of a competitive card though. And then we've got Jerusalem Filled. Interrupt plus band if used by a specific book. So here we've got some Zachariah support, which is not really a deck that exists, but that we are getting some cards for. Banning to 2 heroes from each player, and that they can be any. It's not even limited to Old Testament heroes. Cross-Testament banding is pretty limited, so this being a way to do that is inherently interesting. I do think you really want the interrupt. This is a really solid effect with the interrupt. If it was always interrupt without the Zachariah hero clause, then I could definitely see like Old Testament based mono silver playing it. And who knows, maybe Old Testament mono silver does end up having enough Zachariah heroes that you do play it. But at the same time, Old Testament mono silver is not, I don't think, is quite there competitively. So I want to put this into non-competitive, but given that how cool and impactful banning to any 2 heroes is from both players, I'm gonna go ahead and move this up here, and maybe it sees play in something. And there you have it. That's all the silver cards, and thus all the good cards from times to come. Stay tuned next time. Probably a little bit more of a gap between this video and the evil cards than these 3 past videos that we just did, but shouldn't have to wait too long before we get to take a look at all the cool evil cards that we've got in times to come. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.